Hi, YouTube fans. This is Matt of Post April 6th YouTube channel. Well, I got another what if scenario story idea that is partially based on facts, and the other half, or the other side of it, is fiction that could potentially be a fact. What all this means is it is concerning the murders that were actually done hands-on by the Zodiac killer. And this one was his second to last. I'm referring to the Berryessa murders, or the Berryessa murder. It takes place in an area at or near Lake Berryessa, presumably in Napa County, Northern California, on September 27th, 1969. And in this particular murder, not only is it not in Vallejo or Benicia, it is in Berryessa. And this time, this guy has an executioner's hood over his head, and it's covered up his body until about here, roughly. And he's got a black windbreaker, or black clothing of some type, presumably, underneath the executioner's hood. And what he does is Cecelia and Shepard and BRYAN HARTNELL are cuddled up. They're not making love, but they're just in love. And they're just talking about whatever they were talking about. And Cecelia sees a guy who she saw, trying to conceal himself behind a tree, and then all of a sudden he comes walking towards us, and then the next thing she sees after that is that he has a gun in his hand. Yes. And then what happens is after he tosses out the keys, he has the Zodiac does this. Zodiac has the Zodiac orders Cecelia, because he hands her a piece of rope, to go over to her boyfriend and tie him up. And then the Zodiac killer goes over, and they're both on their knees with their arms behind their back, and he ties her up and then ties him up, or vice versa. And then he looks around and he stabs him. Cecelia and Shepard lived for a little bit longer, but later on, once she got to, I believe it was called Mount Helena, or St. Helena Hospital, she immediately goes into a coma as soon as she's in. The paramedics or whoever took her over there got her into the emergency room. She becomes comatose. And BRYAN HARTNELL is very sick. He's lost probably, I would assume, at least 3 to 4 quarts of blood, because he's been stabbed in the back several times. And anyways, here is what I have a strong hunch actually happened during the murder. It was not reported by the police, but A guy is he's not a policeman or a forest ranger. He's just an innocent bystander who happens to drive by, and he sees the stabbings going on, and he's driving really slow, and he's in a car where the motor does not make much noise. It may be like a foreign car, like a Volvo or a Saab. And he keeps going, and then right after it gets to the point where he can't see, he looks through the mirror, the visor mirror that is up here, and he can see a guy in an executioner, and he starts driving off fast. If this were really true, you know what I think happened next? It doesn't happen like that within less than 2 minutes. It happens later on that day. After the guy gets home, about 3 hours later, after he's had time to make himself either a sandwich, a cold cut sandwich, or grill a hamburger, or whatever he liked to cook on the stove. And he's watching TV, and then all of a sudden the phone rings. And when he picks up the phone, he can hear he can hear cars in the background. He can hear the person holding on the phone. He can hear him going. He goes, and the guy keeps saying, "Hello, hello, who's there? Hello." If I don't hear you say something in the next 5 seconds, I'm hanging up the phone. 1, 2, 3, and the voice says, the caller says, 4. And then the guy says, "Who is this? Why are you calling me? Why are you calling me?" "I know who you are. I know all about where you live. And I know your license plate on your car. And I know about your job at the school in the administrative office." And he hangs up. Yep. And then what happens is this man, here is the name of the witness, not the suspect, the witness. He goes by Jim, but his full name is James Darren Xumann, and it's spelled Xumann. Xumann, after doing research on it, I believe it could be Asian, and it could also be a German last name. His age, 29 years old. He was born on August 19th, 1940. Place of birth, Ruth, Massachusetts. Because in the state of Massachusetts, there is a town named Ruth, R-U-T-H, like a fairly common female name for people that were born between 1920 and 1965. His current job, and this was St. Helena's education, public schools. He's a speech therapist and special education oversight. Teacher. He teaches a little more behind the scenes than going into classrooms. He just comes into certain classrooms for a little bit of observation how the teacher's doing. And anyways, so after the phone call, he immediately calls the police. And a patrolman comes over and he takes a report. And he asked about the duration of the phone call, and he said it was about 2 minutes. And then he asked, this is the patrolman asking the questions. The patrolman asked, do you know what type of surroundings of where the phone call was made? He says, it seemed to me, because I could hear traffic, it was likely a payphone. And they started, the patrolman turned in the report, and he had a detective do some checking around at some payphones. He got the phone numbers, and then the detective went and did some call log search. And sure enough, it was a payphone that was in St. Helena that was located no more than 2.7 miles away from Jim's house, because he lived in a nice 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that was about 1,050 58 square feet. And it had a fairly big 2-car garage. I mean, the size of the garage itself was big for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. And then nothing happens for about a couple of weeks. And then one day, when he comes into his house, nothing looks disturbed, but on a leftover plate of food that contains some leftover meatloaf, there's something written on a piece of paper. He finds this. It's not only the Zodiac symbol, but the Z right here means Zodiac, and the number 1 numeral means number 1. Huh. So, like I've already said before, but I'll say it again, it means Zodiac is number 1. Yeah. He was trying to really get Jim to feel the most scared he's ever felt in his life. And he calls the local police. And they take that in as evidence. And the patrolman and the detective searched the whole house to find any evidence that any of his stuff may have been tampered with. They find nothing. So what likely happened with the Zodiac killer doing this was he used a lock pick, and he picked the front door lock, and he goes in and he places that in there, and then he quietly walks out and he looks real close from the window right by the front door before he opens up the door. He locks the door, and then he walks a few steps to where his car is parked, which would be probably about 4 houses down that way. And he quietly drives away and takes off. Yep. Then what happens after that is the Zodiac killer doesn't try to taunt this man anymore, because he knows that if he starts to taunt Jim, that sooner or later someone's going to see him. I mean, someone's going to see the Zodiac killer. That's another bystander that will be a credible witness that will provide the proof they need to get a description of who he really is. Yep. Now, even though this has nothing to do with Jim in any way, shape, or form, or it won't be used for the purpose of Zodiac taunting him later on, the next murder, which was the last murder that happens with the Zodiac killer, was Paul Stein, a taxi cab driver in San Francisco, gets his brains blown out with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Yep. Now, the person who I personally suspect was the real Zodiac killer, I'm not going to say his full name, but I'll tell you this much. It's not Arthur Lee Allen, and it's not these other potential suspects that YouTube buffs like to think it is. But the Zodiac killer went by the name Gake or Geike. And he lived in San Francisco. He didn't live somewhere else near San Francisco. So, that's all I've got to say about this. I hope that the viewers find this interesting, and I put myself over here so that I could have the air conditioner out of the viewer's visual background side effects, and so that I can do things a little bit different this time. Thank you, everyone, for watching my vlogs, and there's going to be more in the future. Thank you again, and goodbye now. Thanks a lot.